All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time, we're tackling the origin of Superman.
A big one.
You know him, you know the symbol. But today, we're going beyond the surface to uncover what makes his story so enduring.
Right.
We've got excerpts from his Wikipedia page,
Okay.
tracing his journey from those early comic books all the way through radio, TV, and film.
It's going to be quite a ride.
Yeah, it really is.
Decades of storytelling.
It is.
Each time it's told and retold.
Yeah.
It seems to reflect the hopes and anxieties of that moment in time.
It really is wild to think about
Yeah.
just how much this character has evolved
Yeah.
since his first appearance way back in 1938.
Well, we should probably start with the basics then.
Okay.
You know, the story always begins with Krypton. A doomed planet, really,
Yeah.
on the brink of destruction.
Doomed from the start.
To save their infant son, Kal-El, Jor-El, and Lara send him, rocketing towards Earth.
High drama right from the get-go. Tiny spaceship crash lands in Smallville, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the heartland of America.
It's almost poetic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Such an extraordinary being.
Yeah.
Ends up in such an ordinary setting.
Absolute. It's that contrast, I think,
I think so.
that makes his upbringing so compelling.
Yeah.
You've got this alien with incredible powers raised by two kind, humble farmers.
Right, Jonathan and Martha Kent.
They name him Clark
They do?
and instill in him this strong moral compass.
It's nature versus nurture.
It really is.
Like the ultimate experiment.
Yeah, but did Clark always know?
Hmm.
He was different, you know?
Right. Well,
Was he aware of his powers from the start?
that's where we get into those variations.
Okay.
You see, Superman's origin story wasn't fully formed
Uh-huh.
right from the beginning.
Oh, okay.
The earliest version, in Action Comics, #1,
Okay.
only 1 page long.
Wow, really?
And Krypton wasn't even named.
Oh, wow.
The focus was more on establishing him as this champion of the oppressed, a force for good in the world.
Only 1 page.
1 page.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
For those early readers, Superman must have been just
A bit of a mystery.
a total mystery.
Yeah.
And what about those early explanations for his powers?
Well, initially,
Yeah.
it was presented as purely scientific.
Oh, okay.
Kryptonians were depicted as millions of years
Wow.
more evolved,
Okay.
possessing these natural abilities that are far beyond
Right.
human capacity.
It's reflecting that fascination with science fiction at the time.
Absolutely.
The idea that evolution could lead to these extraordinary beings.
Yeah, and that's something we see
Right.
pop up again and again,
Yeah.
even today.
It reminds me of those old pulp sci-fi magazines
Huh?
where heroes would gain, like, incredible strength on other planets
Right, yeah.
due to different gravity.
Exactly, or atmospheres.
Yeah. So speaking of influences then, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else inspired Superman's creators? Siegel and Schuster.
You're definitely on the right track with that pulp sci-fi connection.
Yeah.
One particularly interesting parallel
Okay.
is Gladiator. It's a novel from 1930.
All right.
The hero, Hugo Danner,
Okay.
he gets his superhuman strength from a serum that was injected
Interesting.
while he was in the womb.
That does sound familiar.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There was actually a threat
Okay.
of a plagiarism lawsuit at
Bam.
one point.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
So we've got these pulpy sci-fi influences, a potential legal battle.
Mm-hmm.
What about those deeper themes in Superman's story? The
Right.
things that go beyond the surface.
Well, I think you have to consider
yeah.
that both Siegel and Schuster were Jewish,
Right.
and you can't ignore those potential parallels
Yeah.
to the story of Moses.
Right.
You've got this baby sent away
Yeah.
to escape danger,
Yeah.
destined for greatness.
It's a whole other layer of
It-
meaning
Yeah.
to Superman's journey.
It's that classic immigrant story, too, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Leaving your home behind,
Trying to fit in,
trying to fit into a new
while
world.
secretly harboring
Great.
extraordinary abilities.
I mean, it's something a lot of people can relate to on some level, right?
Absolutely.
Even without the superpowers.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a theme that resonates
Mm-hmm.
across cultures
Yeah.
and generations.
It does. And as we'll see, that ability to adapt and evolve, I think
Yeah,
that's what keeps Superman's story so relevant, even almost a century later.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So we've talked about those core elements of Superman's origin story, some of the influences behind it. But the thing about Superman is his story doesn't just stay static.
No, not at all.
It's constantly evolving.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Superman's Wikipedia entry actually gives us a pretty good framework for understanding how his story has changed over time.
Right.
They break down his comic book history into different eras,
Right.
each reflecting kind of the trends of that time.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of just throwing out these terms, like Golden Age and Silver Age,
Right.
at our listeners, can you kind of walk us through those eras?
Sure.
How Superman's story changes?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the
Early days, what we call the golden age of comics,
Okay.
Krypton was almost an afterthought.
Interesting.
The focus was on Superman as this larger-than-life symbol of good,
Right.
battling injustice in Metropolis.
Okay.
His alien origins were there, but it wasn't,
Yeah.
the main attraction.
So when did Krypton really take center stage?
Things really took off in the Silver Age.
Okay.
Suddenly, we got a much more detailed look
All right.
at Kryptonian society.
Okay.
We learned about their advanced technology, their complex social structures,
Yeah.
their culture, and of course,
Oh, yeah.
we met a whole host of new Kryptonian characters.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like Supergirl,
Yeah.
Krypto the Superdog.
It sounds like Superman's world was suddenly getting a lot bigger. Was that a good thing?
Well, it certainly made for some exciting stories,
Yeah.
but it could get a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
You had all these new characters and concepts being thrown in,
Right.
and sometimes it felt like the story was losing focus.
That makes sense. It's like anything that grows
Mm-hmm.
and expands.
Right.
You need to find ways to keep things cohesive.
Absolutely.
So what happened next?
So the Bronze Age saw a bit of a course correction.
Okay.
There was an attempt to streamline things
Right.
to make the continuity more consistent.
Okay.
It was also during this period that writers started exploring
Yeah.
Jor-El's life on Krypton
Yeah.
in more detail.
Interesting.
Examining those events that led to the planet's destruction.
So it's like each era of comics is reflecting
Yeah.
the changing tastes and expectations of the
That's-
readers.
Yeah.
Precisely.
And that leads us to, I think, one of the most fascinating aspects of Superman's history.
Okay.
The reboots?
Yeah, the reboot.
Because even Superman, the Man of Steel,
Right.
isn't immune
He's not.
to a good continuity reboot.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's not just about wiping the slate clean.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to keep a character
Uh-huh.
created in the 1930s relevant to modern audiences.
Right.
It's about reinterpreting that myth
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
each new generation.
Yeah.
One of the most famous examples
Yeah.
is Crisis on Infinite Earths back in 1985.
I know. That was a huge event in the comic book world.
It was mad.
For those of us who maybe aren't hardcore fans,
Mhm.
can you break down what made it so significant?
Think of it like hitting the reset button on a
Uh-huh.
video game.
All right.
Crisis allowed DC Comics to streamline their entire universe.
Yeah.
Get rid of all those inconsistencies,
Right.
all those contradictory storylines that had built up
Makes sense.
over decades.
Yeah.
This paved the way for John Byrne's Man of Steel in 1986,
Okay.
which gave us a completely reimagined origin story.
What was different about Byrne's take on Superman?
He stripped away a lot of the excess
Okay.
that had accumulated over the years.
Right.
Krypton became this colder, more technologically advanced society,
Right.
but also less emotional.
Oh, interesting.
Superman's powers were toned down,
Okay.
and he was portrayed as more isolated,
Yeah.
really grappling with the burden of being the last of his kind.
It sounds like a much darker, more introspective take on the character.
It was definitely a reflection of the times.
Yeah.
In the 80s, there was this trend toward
Right.
grittier, more realistic
Yeah.
superhero stories.
But even with those changes, Superman still resonated
Yeah, he did.
with readers.
He did.
Right.
Absolutely. And the reboots didn't stop there.
Okay.
You had Superman Birthright in 2003,
Okay.
which tried to update the origin story for a new millennium.
Right.
Lex Luthor became a childhood friend of Clark's.
Oh, wow.
And there was even a subplot about global terrorism.
So each reboot is trying to find that balance, right?
It is.
Between honoring those classic elements of the myth
Yeah,
and making the story feel relevant to contemporary audiences.
exactly.
You also had Superman, Secret Origin in 2009,
Right.
which brought back elements like the Legion of Superheroes
Mm-hmm.
and showed Clark using his powers as a teenager.
It was a way of exploring those early years
Right.
while still staying true to that core of his character.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the New 52 in 2011.
Another big shakeup.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind the New 52?
It was an attempt to bring Superman back to basics,
Okay.
to create this younger,
Right.
more relatable hero for a new generation of readers.
Okay.
This Superman was more of an activist,
Right.
someone who wasn't afraid to stand up for what he believed in.
It's fascinating how Superman's origin keeps evolving,
Yeah.
reflecting really our own anxieties and aspirations.
It's like we're constantly projecting our own hopes and fears
onto this fictional character.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one of the things I
think so too.
that makes him so enduring. He's kind of this blank slate
He is.
onto which we can project our own values
Right.
and beliefs.
But it's not just about the comic books.
Right.
You know, Superman's origin story has been told and retold across all sorts of media.
Okay, so let's talk about those adaptations then.
Right.
You've got radio shows, cartoons, movies, TV series. Where do we even begin?
Well, there's some fascinating tidbits
Okay.
scattered throughout
Okay.
Superman's media history.
Okay.
For instance, did you know that kryptonite, you know, that iconic green rock that can weaken Superman,
Right.
was actually introduced
Okay.
in the 1940s radio show.
No way. I always assumed that was
Yeah.
creation of the comic books.
Originally, it was just a way
Really?
to give the voice actor a break,
Wow.
but it caught on and quickly became
Yeah.
a staple of the Superman mythos.
It's a great example of how even seemingly small details can have a huge impact on a character's legacy.
Absolutely.
What about those classic Fleischer Superman cartoons from the 40s, you know?
Yeah.
Those had to have influenced
They did.
the character's image, right?
They absolutely did. And here's a fun fact.
Okay.
Superman couldn't fly in the early comic books.
Wait, what? You're telling me the Man of Steel
Couldn't fly.
couldn't fly?
He could only leap tall buildings
Okay.
in a single bound.
Wow.
The animators for the Fleischer cartoons thought that looked silly,
Oh, okay.
so they gave him the power of flight.
That's amazing.
I think it is, yeah.
It makes you realize how much
Yeah,
even seemingly core aspects of Superman have changed over time.
they have.
And let's not forget the impact
Yeah.
of the 1978 Superman movie starring Christopher Reeve.
Christopher Reeve, yeah. But that Krypton sequence, oh yeah, with Marlon Brando as Jor-El,
Right.
that was groundbreaking
It was.
for its time.
Yeah.
It set a new standard, I think, for superhero films
I'd agree.
and really helped solidify Superman's place in popular culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like each adaptation is kind of borrowing from and building upon what came before,
It is, yeah.
creating its own unique mythology.
Very much like
Yeah.
what we do as fans, piecing together our own understanding
Right, yeah,
of the character
of the character.
from all these different sources.
So after this whirlwind tour
Yeah.
of Superman's origin story,
Mm-hmm.
what stands out to you as the most essential element?
I think.
What is it about this story that continues to resonate with people after all these years?
You know, for me, I think it goes beyond the powers or the planet he comes from.
Okay.
It's about those choices that Superman makes.
Right.
He has all this power, but he chooses to use it for good.
Right. He could rule the world, you know,
Easily.
but he chooses to serve.
That's a really good point. It's interesting how he's often called like the ultimate immigrant story, right?
Yeah.
Coming to a new world, trying to fit in.
To fit in, yeah.
But he's this incredibly powerful being.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say about us?
Right.
The society that embraces him.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
We see him as this beacon of hope, this symbol of truth and justice.
Right.
But he's also, you know, he's an outsider.
He is. He's constantly grappling
Yeah.
with that dual identity.
Yeah, trying to bridge that gap between two worlds.
And as our world changes, I think so too. Does our understanding
Seeing so.
of what Superman represents,
Right.
you know, think about it.
Yeah.
In times of crisis,
Yeah.
we look to him for strength, reassurance.
Uh-huh.
But in times of like social upheaval,
Right.
we debate his role, you know,
Right.
his responsibility.
Right. Should he remain a symbol of hope?
Right.
Or should he take a more active stance?
Yeah, it's like we're constantly trying to figure out what we need from our heroes, you know? Do we want them to stand above it all?
Yeah.
Or do we want them to get down in the dirt with us?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Superman, with this, you know, ever-evolving origin story,
Yeah.
becomes a mirror reflecting those changing needs.
Right.
You know, he's a symbol of our own hopes and anxieties, our own struggles with identity and belonging.
So After this deep dive into the origins of Superman, what resonates most with you?
That's a tough one. Yeah. I think, the real power of Superman is that it's not just about, the fantastic elements of his story.
Right.
It's about the way he inspires us, I think, to strive for something better.
Yeah.
To use our own strengths, however great or small.
Absolutely.
To make a difference in the world.
Beautifully put.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been fun. Into the origins of Superman. And for all of you listening, we hope this has given you a new appreciation for the Man of Steel and really just the enduring power of his story. So keep exploring.
Definitely.